The wind howled across the endless plains as the iron beast thundered down the tracks, its black smoke coiling into the golden evening sky. The train screeched, sparks flying beneath its wheels as it slowed near a small, lonely station surrounded by nothing but dust, tumbleweeds, and the faint silhouettes of cattle far in the distance. The signboard hung crooked, half broken from the last storm, its faded paint barely spelling the name of a place most travelers never meant to stop. Yet this was where the young woman named Clara found herself, clutching her small leather suitcase, heart pounding as she stepped down from the train. She had come so far, 3 days and nights from the east, riding through endless stretches of prairie and desert, her eyes fixed on the dream of a man she'd never met, a man who had promised her a new beginning. But as she looked around, confusion tightened her chest. The platform was nearly empty except for a few ranch hands and a child playing with a stick in the dirt. There was no one holding a sign with her name, no one waiting with flowers or a welcoming smile, just wind, smoke, and the smell of hot iron. Clara tried to reassure herself, thinking perhaps the man had been delayed, that maybe this wasn't her stop at all. Her ticket said Briar Ridge Station, but the wooden post before her read Briar Creek. She stared at it, her stomach sinking. Creek, not Ridge, she whispered. She had gotten off at the wrong station. Panic rippled through her as she turned to the conductor waving his lantern. But the train had already started to move again. The wheels clanked louder and louder, the smoke thickened, and in a blink the train was gone, vanishing into the endless horizon. Clara was left standing alone in the dust, gripping her suitcase so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had no money left to buy another ticket, no idea how far Briar Ridge might be, and the sun was sinking fast. A voice suddenly cut through the quiet. "Ma'am, you lost?" It was a deep voice, rough like gravel but not unkind. Clara turned to see a tall man in a wide-brimmed hat standing near the station fence. His shirt was dusty, sleeves rolled, and the sun caught the faint glint of a badge pinned to his vest. A sheriff, perhaps, or a ranch foreman. His face was sunburned, lined with years of hard living, but his eyes were gentle. Clara hesitated, unsure if she should speak. But the man stepped closer, lowering his hat respectfully. "You looking for someone?" he asked. She swallowed hard, voice trembling. I was supposed to meet Mr. William Harper. He sent for me. I'm his bride." The man's brows furrowed slightly. "Harper? Ain't no Harper around these parts. Closest is Harper's Creek, 10 miles west. Maybe you meant that?" He paused, noticing her pale face and the way she swayed slightly from exhaustion. "You don't look fit to walk anywhere tonight. There's an inn down the road, though it ain't much. You can rest there till morning." Clara nodded weakly, murmuring her thanks. She tried to keep her composure, but tears burned her eyes as she followed him down the dusty road. They walked in silence until the dim glow of lamplight appeared. A small, weathered inn made of rough timber. The man tipped his hat. "You'll be safe here, ma'am. I'll tell the owner to fix you a room." Clara thanked him again, her voice barely audible. When she turned to open her suitcase for a few coins, she realized she had only one left. The rest had been spent on her passage ticket and the dress she wore, simple cream gown she had sewn herself, hoping to impress the man she was meant to marry. Now, standing alone under the flickering lamplight, she felt the weight of her foolish hope. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is a sign I was never meant to find him." That night, Clara lay awake listening to the sound of the wind battering the shutters. She stared at the cracked ceiling and thought of the life she'd left behind, her sick mother, who had urged her to go, the small church in her hometown where she had prayed for a future beyond poverty. She had answered a newspaper advertisement. Mail order bride sought for, honest man seeking companion to help raise a family on the western frontier. The man had written kind letters, speaking of wide skies, a home built by his own hands, and a daughter who longed for a mother's touch. Clara had imagined herself stepping off the train into his arms. Instead, she had stepped into loneliness. Morning came with a pale sun. Clara gathered her things, determined to find Briar Ridge somehow. As she stepped outside, the same man from last night was hitching up a wagon. "Mornin'," he said, glancing up. "Name's Luke. I'm heading west toward Ridge County to deliver some supplies. You can ride along if you like." Clara hesitated. She didn't know him, but there was something steady and trustworthy in his tone. "Thank you," she said softly. "That's where I need to go." He nodded and helped her onto the wagon, his hands rough but careful. As the horses started moving, Clara watched the landscape roll by, dusty hills, fields of sage, and occasional patches of wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Hours passed before the wagon crested a small ridge overlooking a wide valley. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from a chimney and the faint outline of a farmhouse. Luke pointed. "That there's the Harper Ranch. But you best be sure it's the right Harper this time." She smiled faintly despite her nerves. As they approached, a child's laughter echoed, faintly from the yard. A little girl, chasing a chicken through the dust. Clara's heart clenched. The girl had golden curls, much like the description from William Harper's letters. Maybe she had found the right place after all. But as Clara stepped down from the wagon, something unexpected happened. The little girl froze mid-step, staring at her with wide, astonished eyes. Then, in a trembling voice filled with wonder, she whispered, "Papa, Papa." God finally answered us. The words struck Clara like lightning. Before she could respond, a man emerged from the barn, tall and broad-shouldered. His blue shirt rolled up to his elbows, straw hat shading his face. He looked between the girl and Clara, confusion clouding his features. "What's going on, Rosie?" he asked. The child ran to him, clutching his leg. "Papa, it's her. The lady from my dream." The man frowned, wiping sweat from his brow. "Dream?" he repeated, turning his gaze to Clara. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake." Clara's lips parted, but no sound came out. She suddenly realized this wasn't William Harper, the name she had been writing to. The letters she carried in her suitcase might not even belong to this man. Somehow she had gotten everything wrong. Her knees felt weak. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I think I made a terrible mistake." The man looked at her a long moment, then sighed deeply. "You came on that morning train, didn't you? Must have gotten off too soon. Briar Ridge is 15 miles north." His voice softened. "You've come a long way. You look worn out. You're welcome to rest here till you can figure things out." He nodded, toward the house, where the little girl was still staring at Clara like she'd seen an angel. Clara wanted to refuse, to apologize again and keep walking, but her body was too weak. She followed them inside. The house smelled of fresh bread and pine wood. It was simple, 2 rooms, a wooden table, a faded curtain fluttering at the window, but warm and full of life. The man introduced himself as Daniel Wade, a widower raising his daughter alone since his wife passed 2 winters ago. As he spoke, Clara noticed the tenderness in his eyes when he looked at the child. How careful he was not to let grief linger too long in his tone. The girl Rosie chattered endlessly, telling stories of how she prayed every night for a mama to come. "And I told Papa God listens," she said proudly. Clara smiled faintly, her heart aching. Days passed as Clara helped around the house, cooking and mending. Daniel offered to take her to Briar Ridge once the stormy weather cleared. But somehow, every day that passed made her less certain she wanted to leave. The little girl followed her everywhere, holding her hand, giggling, asking her to read bedtime stories. Daniel watched quietly from the porch at night, the soft glow of the lantern reflecting in his thoughtful eyes. Something unspoken began to grow between them, something fragile, gentle, and entirely unexpected. Clara found herself praying at night again, but this time not just for guidance, for belonging.